That was surprising.
Was it?
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the Vergecast. I'm Nilay Patel.
I'm Ross Miller.
And this
Do your thing.
is David Pierce.
David.
What up, bro? How's it going?
I'm still sort of shocked that I'm here. This is amazing.
So
Yeah.
are we. Apologies, everyone, for the technical difficulties. We literally had to just put the laptop out and make David a floating head.
Yeah, look, apparently the city of Los Angeles does not know how to build an Ethernet connection. No Google Fiber. So David,
No.
I don't. This is the way we had to make it work. David's on a laptop, sitting on a desk, sitting on Earth in a building.
I'm on this MiFi. It's
He's using a
terrific.
MiFi.
It's a beautiful.
Does it have a
Wi-Fi.
color screen?
Does it? No.
I'm
it's just
fascinated
like
by
it's
MiFis with
like
like
a little
color
hockey
touch
puck.
screens.
Really?
Yeah, it's.
I mean, I get the e-ink. Actually, I'm happy to have
No,
that.
the e-ink is fine, but
Yeah, yeah.
the MiFis with the color touchscreens, it's like technology has run amok. You've gone too far. Novotel.
No, I have to say it's been awesome. I've had to tether constantly all week, and the best one was this little. I think it was a Novotel. It was a little MiFi that I could just like scroll through and like kick everybody else off on it, and just like
So with
knock
the
everybody else
touchscreen?
off and be like, the bandwidth is mine. Everybody get out.
Does it have multi-touch?
Did you scream the band with his mind at each and every one, every available opportunity?
And then I actually just set the room on fire and just
That's
left.
good.
It was great.
Well,
Beautiful.
look. So David's here. Well, he's not here.
He's here.
Look, for the people listening on audio alone,
Hey, David.
you can pretend that David is here.
You don't know what I'm doing
For
with
the
your
people
face.
watching the video, I'm very sorry about Ross and his behavior.
I have ultimate power here.
But look, whatever. We have as much of David as we need. Generally, we have too much David. And it has been... so first of all, this is the Vergecast.
This is.
Where we discuss the week in technology news, culture news, technology news culture.
Culture,
the
culture,
culture
culture. Yeah.
of news. You just take those words, you mash them up any way you want, and that's the show we make. And it has been a bonkers week of
Yes.
news, just utterly crazy. It started on Monday with Sony. No, it started with Microsoft, Apple, Sony in that order.
Right.
And then
Yep.
kind of in the middle, Nintendo was like, "Oh, we'll do a thing."
No. So it was right after that. Nintendo did their thing Tuesday, which is a
Yeah.
tradition, but they didn't do the press conference. So David, you were kind of sort of the Nintendo thing. Was there a thing?
Sort of, there wasn't. I mean, they did a live stream that they didn't want to like tell anybody about, and they just kind of like went into a room and they were like,
Yeah.
"Guys, we have some games." Everybody's cheering in the background, I guess, for like Nintendo.
Yeah,
weird.
Nintendo.
So did you go to Best Buy then?
You went to Best Buy. Well, let's do the chronology. So
Okay.
David's at E3. We'll talk
Yes.
about Apple afterwards. Let's get through E3 real quick.
Sure.
So I would say that Sony has emerged from E3 as like the darling of the show,
Right.
for doing virtually nothing different than right. They've succeeded by maintaining the status quo, which is. They're like, and used games will work the same as used games have
It's
worked
always done.
since 1986.
Yeah.
And the console doesn't come with a motion controller, so it's $399, which is how much consoles have cost.
Right.
And it plays games. Games are awesome.
And there's no special interaction. Don't worry about the camera. Just
yeah.
pick up your controller and
there's
play
there's
games.
no motion controls. There's no like so and because of that, because they're just like we made a game console. Everyone's very happy with them. Is that your take on what Sony's doing?
I mean, I think it's a little that's a little sort of simplistic, and I think what
Yeah.
Sony did here, that was really smart, was play like really, really hard to the gamer crowd, because those are the people who are here. Like there were 5,000 people or whatever at this Sony event on Monday, and like just to like set the stage here, they both had these in like big sports arenas in Los Angeles, not in like theaters, not in little rooms, like. They were sports arenas. It was like, this is where people have concerts, and instead they're like,
Yeah.
let's talk about video games. So like, that's the culture here. People here are obsessed with video games. I got to the Microsoft thing like just shy of 2 hours early, and there were 400 people in line ahead of me. It was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this.
Wow.
But so what Sony did here was basically say, like, just sort of over and over, like, we love gamers and Microsoft hates gamers. Microsoft just wants to like give you ways to watch TV, and we want to let you play games. And like, it was a brilliant move for this. I don't know what it'll do in the sort of grand scheme of how much they sell compared to Microsoft. But for here, they really did sort of come out as the darling, because they said over and over, like, we love gamers and we love people who play games.
And I want to talk about what Microsoft did too, because that video, Sony released a video, and it's particularly the used game thing
Right.
that I think really cemented them as like the favorite of E3, which was during their press conference, they had a video, and they're like, how used games works on the PS4. And it was like a 2-second clip of somebody handing somebody else a game. which
Right.
is cool, right? And that's what you would expect.
Right.
Sure.
But what they didn't say was, what about the games you download from PlayStation Network? What about the free games that that they're giving away
Right.
part of PlayStation Plus? Like, there's a lot of stuff that they're not making
Right.
clear because
Well,
that's
so this is
old
the interesting
model.
thing. So I met with Mark Whitten, who's the chief product officer for Xbox and has headed up a lot of the development of this stuff. And I asked him about that, and I was like, listen, like, I basically said everybody sort of thinks you guys suck right now because you don't let people sell their used games. And he kind of brushed me off. He was like, he sort of said we're in transition. He was like, we are clearly moving towards this digital place where everybody's going to download games.
Right.
And that has its own thing. And he made it sound like the DRM stuff that's going to be there is going to be very different from what we have now, where you can just like hand somebody a disc. And I get the sense from Microsoft that they don't care. They're like, look,
Yeah.
in 2 years, everybody's going to be downloading all these games anyway, and like we'll wait until then, and we think then we're going to win on other stuff,
Yeah.
which was really interesting. So it's like they're making this big bet that like 3 years down the road, they're going to beat Sony so badly that they can afford to like look like the bad guy at the beginning.
Well, I mean, in their history, and I think this is actually going to be a theme for the whole show. I mean, Microsoft's history is like, they were the dark horse with the Xbox, the original Xbox.
Right.
They came out with the 360. They were ahead of the curve on a lot of things. People said they were dumb, right? Nobody wants to play multiplayer, and then they completely dominated the last generation. So you can
Right.
see why they're like, well, we'll just do that again. But
Right.
I'm
That was
not
another
sure-
thing
Go ahead.
that was another thing that Mark Whitten said was he said when they came out with the first Xbox, they had an Ethernet port and not like the narrowband connection for people who had modems, and people freaked out. And he was like, "This is the same reaction we get every time we launch with new stuff." And he was like, "We made a calculated bet that we were going to get beyond that, and we were right." And then they did stuff architecturally that he was like, "We didn't see the Kinect coming, but we had the technology that was ready for something like it." And he was like, "We're constantly making bets that if this thing lasts 8 years, we need to be ready for where we are 8 years from now." And then I kept being like, "Well, what about today?" And he was kind of like, "I don't care."
But the thing is, all those things they were adding, like they were additive. It's like we're not going to take away from what you're used to. We're just going to augment it, and whether you like it or
Right.
not, it's going to be there. This is more of a restrictive move, though. Like the 24-hour thing is just like,
Well,
it's
hold
restrictive.
on. Well, let's talk.
Okay.
Let's just lay out the differences between the two.
All right.
Because we don't know. I mean, EA could publish games to the PS4 and add all kinds of DRM to those games.
Right. Sony's
Right.
basically just doing a laissez-faire approach. Just do whatever you want.
Right. But Microsoft is saying, like, you need to connect once every 24 hours. Things won't work unless you do.
Right.
And it's up to game publishers to decide how they want to enable sales, right?
Yes.
And
Used sales.
retail partners. And you can't transfer to your friends. So they're actually implementing system-level DRM, whereas Sony isn't. That doesn't mean
Right.
Sony's publishers won't do it.
Right.
I mean, that's like, and the publishers are the ones who matter, ultimately, right? I mean,
Right. That's
those-
where all the
they
money
make the
comes from.
games. So, what's Microsoft's doing that's different, David? Can you explain it to us? Because they finally explained it at E3.
So I mean, did they though? Like they sort of did. But I think it's really what you said. Like Microsoft is doing. They're forcing you to have connection. They're forcing you to use this whole kit. First of all, you can't use the Xbox without the Kinect. Like not only are they sold together, they can't be used separately.
Wait, really? If you unplug the Kinect, the Xbox doesn't work?
That's what I'm told.
Wow.
Wow.
Which seems wild to me.
Yeah.
And I like deeply hope that's not true, but like people who know these things told me that. But yeah, so it's Microsoft. The one thing I haven't heard a good explanation for, and like I think Mark Whitten was sort of stupid to, they're sort of stupid to forget people now for 2
Yeah.
years from now. But the one thing that they have not explained in a way that makes any sense to me is the 24-hour check. Where it's like, if you have this system-level DRM for games, then why do you need to constantly be checking to see if I'm online and constantly pinging back to the servers? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me that it works
Right.
that way.
Yeah, but let me just be blunt. I don't care. Like, I don't care. I mean, like, in my world, everything else I own is online all the time. Like, it's a
Right.
pretty small market of people who really care about that stuff, right? I mean, it's like people in the military and, like, I've heard, like, college students bitch about it. But,
Yeah,
like-
no, but I will say that the thing that really kills me, the thing that like my favorite quote of this whole E3 was somebody asked Don Matrick, like, what do you want to do if you want to play online? And he just, without missing a beat, went, "Oh, you can just buy an Xbox 360."
Yeah,
I was
that
like,
was
"Oh no."
biggest dick moment I ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
It's like, just
Yeah, and
buy
it's-
the 8-year-old console. Like,
Right, but it's like that's their strategy. He's like,
Right.
and to some extent, I kind of get that that's their strategy. This is like they're hoping that can last them, another 2 years until we are in this digital space where bandwidth isn't a problem and where people don't care about downloading games and where people don't care about not sharing games, and they're doing some stuff with like family sharing with the Xbox Live stuff that makes a little more sense, but they're hoping that the Xbox 360 can like last them long enough. And it makes me wonder that if Sony wasn't coming out with the PS4 now, if Microsoft would have tried to wait like another year or two to do the Xbox One.
Really? God, the name is so bad.
It
Every
is.
time I hear Xbox One, I think of the first Xbox.
Yeah.
It's not going away. It's been like a month now, right?
Yeah, no, it's that's
Or 3 weeks or something.
that's
That
the
they, So let's go over Sony's announcements. Would they have to show us E3 beyond? It works exactly the same as a PS3 when you hand somebody a game.
Well, right. So Sony's whole thing was like, it was like big Microsoft burn for forever. And we interviewed Scott Rohde from Sony for Top Shelf, which is coming up later today.
Nice
And
promotion.
Nice, well done.
Yeah.
You like that?
Give yourself
And-
$1 since it's your show.
And Scott was literally talking about they were rehearsing at the event before. They were rehearsing their event while Microsoft was doing theirs, and like watching Twitter and saw $4.99, and he said everybody started cheering in the Sony booth, and like high-fiving, and like it was ridiculous. But so Sony comes out and says like all this stuff basically about how they're better than Microsoft, and then kind of dives into games. We still haven't seen a lot of entertainment stuff from Sony.
Yeah.
We finally got to see the hardware, which was good. I actually got to like hold
Also
a controller
looks like a
and
VCR.
look at the hardware.
Well,
It's what?
An angled
Well, it
VCR.
looks like if you took a PS2 and a VCR and you're like, like that's what like I'm gonna make these go together.
I mean, but the bigger question to you: what set top actually does look good? I mean, at least give him some credit for like not having that.
What was that noise, David?
It's like David just belched.
You just received
Skype
a
bubble.
notification.
John just made me laugh.
He laughs like a
Okay, look.
sea
Oh
creature.
no, that was Skype telling me that I'm online.
Oh, good.
good,
Just
good.
in
That's
case
useful.
you didn't know.
Thank you for joining us.
No, look. Yes, they're all going to look like black boxes, but I
Right.
just think that this generation is really boring. I think they look really boring. I think the original 360 looked really cool. I think the PS3 looked really cool. It looked crazy as hell, but looked really cool.
Which PS3?
The very first PS3,
giant
the
fat
first,
one.
the one I have. That one's the shit.
stand that one.
The 360 was like a novel design. I think the 360 Slim or the Stealth Box, which nobody picked up on, which I tried really hard. I think that looks really cool. I thought the original PS3 Slim and not the new one with the
like
the new one
weird
looks
cover.
like the new one looks like literally like
looks
a
like cheap
Kobe.
plastic.
It's
Yeah.
like they went to Kobe and they're like, "You've been knocking us off for years. Do you have any idea about how to do this?" Because what do you think if we just use like our old Discman parts to make a PS3? That it looks like junk. But I thought the first few iterations of the Xbox and the PS3 looked beautiful, and then these new ones look terrible. Both of them look bad, straight up. And the Xbox One looks like garbage, and the
I will say-
PS4 looks boring. It's-
David, you've seen these in person.
So the Xbox One I like less and less as time goes on. It just has that like ugly glossy thing next
Yeah.
to the big fan. It just doesn't look good. The PS4 is I think like a too big version of something that's actually kind of nice looking. Like it has the angled front, which is sort of cool, and it's like a little like catamaran-y stack with a space in the middle, and that's kind of nifty. But I kind
Did
of
you say
agree. Like, they didn't-
catamaran?
yeah, I don't know. There's a better word for it, but I'm going with catamaran.
I mean, do you
I'm
know
sticking
that's
with
like
it.
the waspiest thing that's ever been said on the Vergecast? You
pretty-
should be
yeah.
wearing a polo. Are you wearing dock shoes right now?
I am actually. I'm actually on my yacht. right?
I'm on my
David's gonna
catamaran.
leave the show, put on 2 polo shirts, pop 2 collars, and just walk
no,
off
it's good.
into a,
No, it's great.
into a
That's
yacht.
great for you, LA boy.
Totally fine. I have my Ray-Bans over there. We can hang out. That part's not a lie, unfortunately. But yeah, so I think like the Sony made a too big version of something that actually could have been sort of nice looking.
Well, so is this? Are they both limited by the fact that they had to build PCs? Because these things are PCs,
Yes.
right? It's
No,
like
I
they
think
should
that's
have gone to the
absolutely-
PC case mod guys and been like, "Do you have any old neon lights that we can use for our case?" I mean, like,
Just some liquid cooling we could just like light up.
is that what it? I mean, like, is that what it is? That they're just
No, it's
building
absolutely
PCs
what
and
it is.
they're
And I think the biggest problem that they continue to have is they just need fans everywhere because there's
Right.
so much power and it's like always running at full tilt and it's always doing this crazy stuff. So like when you have to be venting out of every imaginable surface, like it's really hard to do. And the thing is, I think my theory is that people just don't care. Like whenever we've complained about the design before,
Yeah.
people are always just like whatever. And the one thing that they both did is build boxes that like if you don't want to notice them, you don't really have to. Whereas like
Right.
the 360, you were gonna notice. Like it was there, and it was like a centerpiece of your living room, whether you liked it or not. And these you can just sort of like stick away next to your Blu-ray player and be done with it.
But you don't need a Blu-ray player anymore either, because you
can
use this.
stick away next to your
it's all that's left. It's eating
other
everything else.
stuff.
Except stick it next to your cable box and be like,
next to
wow.
your Wii U cable box.
The cable
right?
box, it's like your ugly friend. You're like, you come with
Yeah.
me and I'll look great. I'm
Exactly.
gonna look awesome because
Exactly.
you're a cable box.
So
I'm gonna start going to bars with the cable box. It's gonna be great. Yeah, check. No, look at this first. Then look at me. I'm
Hey.
beautiful. Yeah. Okay. What were you saying, Ross?
So I have to ask you, since like Xbox has been pushing this entertainment thing, and I was wondering if Sony's going to like add anything to it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really have to. We can assume the PS3 capabilities. Does Netflix? Does Hulu? Does Amazon?
It does everything except TV.
Exactly. And does that matter?
And obviously I think Microsoft's TV implementation is silly. So,
Right.
But Microsoft is pushing whole hog with the TV stuff. I mean, like they will get there. They will do something. Sony hasn't made any indications.
But by the time Microsoft gets there, will TV and cable be as big of a selling point?
I don't know.
Because they're going at a rate that cable is also kind of meandering off. They'll hit some point, and like we'll be doing internet video anyway. I don't know. I guess maybe I just.
You're saying all the services will just come to the PS4?
I think so. At
I mean,
some point.
have they said
why not?
anything at all to you about television, David?
Not really. No, they talked about like Flickster and Redbox Instant, and
God.
like it's clearly something they're thinking about, but I don't think they're concerned with it nearly in the way that Microsoft is. And that's sort of weird to me because like if I'm Microsoft, or if I'm Sony rather, and I'm catering to these gamers who are sort of by nature, nerdier people, more willing to hang out and hack their hardware, those are the people who are going to want to like go through the work of getting all their TV and stuff set up. And I think a lot of people who buy Xboxes are not going to ever know that it controls their TV, and a lot of people who buy PS4s will want it to do that, and it won't. And it's a weird thing that Sony seems just sort of willing to ignore, but for their target audience, it would make a ton of sense.
Right. So let's talk about. Well, I want to talk about games because I haven't paid any attention to the games coverage because I was doing the Apple thing. But real quick, the last piece of this is the motion gaming stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you wrote a piece saying that you really liked what Microsoft is doing with the new Kinect, that it's really interesting. And then Paul wrote a piece that was like Sony's giving up on motion gaming. And somewhere in there is like the reality, right? Which is the potential on the Xbox is really great for the new style of motion gaming. But because Sony isn't doing it, it might not happen. And that's kind of the sense I'm getting. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think that's really fair, and I think Microsoft is going to end up being hurt by the fact that Sony doesn't seem to care all that much about motion gaming. But the big thing for me was that like Kinect is going from this sort of gimmicky thing where like it used to be in Madden games, like you would stand in front of your TV and you had to like literally pretend to hike the ball to yourself and then like fake throw it, and that would be it, or like. All of the moves were big and bombastic, and you had to scream at your TV. And now, like, the Kinect is so much better and so much more aware and has so much more data that it can do these much smaller things. And so you watch one of the coolest games I saw, one of the ones I want to play the most, is Dead Rising 3, this big sort of open world zombie game. And he was playing and sort of running around, and at one point this zombie like jumped on his back, and he literally just went like this and just shook it off him.
Yeah.
And it was wild, and it was just like this sort of instinctive reaction that he had. He was just like, get off. And the Kinect like sees this, watches it happen, and gets rid of it.
We can all be my mother playing Super Mario Bros.
Yeah. So wait,
Jumping with the controller.
Dave, I have to ask. I'm gonna move you just for a second. So.
Oh, hey.
Hey, just for a second. So.
Hi, Ross.
Hey, David.
Really,
so
it's
if I just
worst date
should I
ever.
just like play Dead Rising 3 like this the entire time and like
Yes, absolutely.
That's invincibility mode. This is
Yeah,
God
pretty
mode
much.
in Dead Rising.
I want you all to know that what I'm looking at is extremely. I'm going to vine this. You just keep going.
Really?
Yeah, just you keep
All right,
shaking.
sorry, Dave. I'm gonna actually
No,
you can see my
no.
face. I'm
no.
waiting for you. You'll get
just-
Nilay again in a second. Just
Hang on.
That's good.
Nobody-
Miss Nilay.
you know what? It's really just all right.
Just hang on.
Are you ready?
Shake when I tell you to shake.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's
Hold
all
on.
wait. It's fine.
Are you ready?
Shake. No. Okay, wait. Now shake.
Dead Rising 3 God mode.
Wow, this is the worst. This is the worst Vergecast moment of all time.
I am.
This is like a lot of work.
It's
for
the
I
longest-
don't want to do that anymore.
It's the longest 6 seconds I've
Great.
ever experienced.
Oh, you've experienced. Excuse me. All right, David, you're back to not seeing anybody.
Hello, David.
It's better this way. I like
So
it
let's
better.
talk about games.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the Kinect stuff, and it seems like the Kinect stuff is
Right.
great. And that's cool, but
Right.
Yeah.
unless everybody uses it, it won't be great. So like Microsoft first party games will be awesome.
Right.
And
Yes.
then all the third-party developers are going to have to. Microsoft's going to have to like kick them some.
And has Microsoft indicated they're going to do this at all? Because I mean, like Electronic Arts.
What's happening?
If someone's going to make Call.
Someone, did you see that? Yeah,
think
I
John
saw
just-
you.
Who's behind you taking pictures?
Like a phone just came up
Yeah.
from underneath you.
It's John Lagomarsino, everybody.
No, but like, so if you're Electronic Arts and you're making Call of Duty, or sorry, Activision, you're making Call of Duty, what incentive do you have to make Kinect stuff? Because you're not going to do it for PlayStation Eye. No one's going to buy a PlayStation Eye.
Right.
So, what's it matter?
I don't know. I'm not convinced that people will, to be totally honest. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of the games that we've seen, and again, it's early, so a lot of people just aren't talking about some of the things that they're
Yeah.
making, and it could certainly change over time. But for right now, a lot of what we're seeing is not involving Kinect in like big, meaningful ways, or motion gaming in any way. And a few of them have like add-ons for Kinect where like you can do a thing with a controller, or you can do it with Kinect, and like maybe it's more fun. Like there's this moment in Rise where you like press a button to call your archers, or you can yell archers and they come. So it's like whichever you want to do is cool. But one of the really interesting things we've seen here is that there aren't a lot of games that are really, really dependent on it. It's like an add-on rather than like a big change for how we actually
So
play
let's
games.
talk about games. What are the best games you've seen at E3 this year?
Well, so this is the problem: is we've seen a lot of games and we haven't been able to play a lot of games.
That's rough.
So there are a ton of cool games. We saw a lot of them during the demos. Quantum Break seems super ambitious and maybe awesome. Watch Dogs is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
The Rise Son of Rome, this like 300-y game where you just like murder people ruthlessly all the time, and that's, as far as I can tell, the whole purpose of the game. Actually looks really cool.
Can you just
there's
tell
an
me about
Assassin's-
Metal Gear? Look, this was a long
Metal
setup for you
Gear?
to just tell me about Metal Gear. Can you tell me what the hell is going on in Metal Gear and what Kiefer Sutherland
Wait. In any time you ever ask that question, can you tell me what the hell is going
Okay,
on in Metal
that's
Gear?
fair.
That's applicable for the
But
entire
this new one definitely
series.
seems like it's a torture simulator.
Yeah.
Like the
No, it
old
seems
ones were not. The old ones, like, they at least had a plot about like. And by the way, I just read the Metal Gear wiki because I tweeted that I would pay $1 million to watch.
6 hours later.
I tweeted that I'd pay $1 million to watch Hideo Kojima explain the story of Metal Gear to Kiefer Sutherland. Like, wouldn't you just want to be in that room where he was like, okay?
Yes.
And then I was like, wait, what is the story of Metal Gear? And I went to the wiki, and it's insane.
It is unbelievable.
But now it's like a torture simulator. Like that trailer is like basically like you push the button and then you torture the guy. a little bit more.
did you see the Red Band trailer for Metal Gear?
No,
5?
there's a Red Band trailer.
There's a Red Band one at the very beginning. Basically, just added stuff.
Wait,
to the
is that
beginning.
somehow implying that the other trailer is like not gruesome
So
or
here's
brutal?
what happens at the beginning of the other trailer.
God.
There's a child.
Yeah.
I'm spoiling it. There's a child.
You can't spoil a trailer.
You can spoil a trailer.
No, you can't.
Because all right, so David, when you see this, you're gonna know
He's like
there
thinking
are
about
4
it.
hands in a child's guts, and you can see the guts, and they're trying to pull out a package while
Gentlemen,
he's alive.
can we
and
pull up the
writhing.
trailer back there?
I
Can you
no,
do whatever
can we
you do?
not? Can we just
I would
not?
like to watch the trailer. I think
No,
our
it's-
audience.
He's gonna like
you can watch
change
it later.
the rating of the Vergecast here. This
Yeah,
is
the
gonna be
Red
bad.
Band. Have you seen the Red Band Vergecast? It opens with Ross's hands and a child. Oh, that sounds terrible.
And I'm just dancing the whole time.
Why? Why? So did
yeah.
you see it? You didn't see any of the Metal Gear stuff.
I didn't know. We were running around it, but it's the same thing. It's like if you've seen the trailer, you've seen what we've seen here, and that's been sort of the frustrating thing about.
And so have you
this
you
year's
haven't been able
E3.
to play any of these games on the next gen consoles?
So we got to play Rise a little bit. We got to play some of the other games. We got to play Killer Instinct, the new fighting game.
Yeah.
We got to play Arkham Origins, the new Batman game, but we only got to play it on a PS3. I got to play some of the sports games.
Wait.
So there's stuff floating around, but it's some of like the really cool games. Like it's really clear that Quantum Break, they have built exactly as much as they needed for a trailer, and that's it.
Well, Quantum
Yeah.
Break is the one that's like also is the TV analog, right? Just like the
Right.
sci-fi show.
Right. It's a mix of like a TV show and a game, and the conceit is amazing. And if they can pull it off, it's going to be really really cool. But it's going to be really hard to pull off.
Did they address the fact that sci-fi is doing this now with Defiance, and it's kind of like not connected at all? Like they tried to make it connected, and it's like not kind of working.
Evan, do you have the trailer back there? I see you working. All right. What's my ETA?
Hey, don't worry. I really do
2
not want
minutes.
to see this trailer right now. But
I think
anyway,
we have to watch it.
Okay.
I would like to get a live reaction shot of David watching this trailer.
He can't see it from here.
Whatever.
I'll just
It'll be-
hear it.
Technology.
It'll be
awesome.
somewhere.
Sorry, so David, I have to ask. So when I was growing up, like Killer Instinct was the fighting game for me. Like it was my favorite of all
Sure.
time. How was the new one?
It's the same. Like it's a fighting game.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I want.
No, I mean that's the thing, and like to some extent, that's a really good thing, and that's been one of the interesting things seeing here is like they're building some stuff into these new games, and some of the best ones are like really trying to do cool new, technologically ambitious things, like Destiny trying to marry this sort of open world game with a first-person shooter. It's like Halo and Warcraft, and it seems wild, and it's gonna be really fun, and I'm really excited to play it. And that was another game we didn't actually get to play because it's clearly not ready at all. But a game like Killer Instinct is just like a better looking version of the game that it's always been.
And this is like the key
Assassin's
problem
Creed
with
seems
the
to be the
next gen
same
stuff.
way. And like they're all still video games and they look nice and they're pretty. And
Let
they're
me show you
good.
the most amazing video game of all time. This is a Red Band trailer
Can we not?
for Metal Gear 5.
Can we please
so
not do
excited.
this?
We're gonna watch. We're just gonna
No.
watch it. Yeah.
Viewer discretion highly
Who are our
advised.
viewers? They're fine.
They're-
They're fine.
Look, it's red.
Look. My God.
This is, I mean,
Snake.
doesn't look like Kiefer at all, by the way. David, can you see the screen all the way over here?
I'm aware that
Hold on
there's
a
a
second.
screen. I can't really see anything.
All right, I seriously want to cut away before.
Can somebody narrate? Nilay, can you narrate this for me?
There's a man turning a wheel. The wheel. He's charging. He's going to torture a guy with electricity now.
Well,
He's
sure.
sparking the things together. Not for any nation. And he's torturing a guy.
No, that's a girl.
That's a lady.
It's a lady.
Oh, well. So I'd like to. Okay, we can stop this now. I'd like
This
to point
reminds me
out,
of the Tekken
not for any
movies.
ideology. As far as I know, all of the
Thank
people
you.
in Metal Gear now are now robots controlled by a central AI, known as GW.
No, wait, that was-
controlled by the Patriots.
Wait, wasn't that 4 also?
That was for.
Yeah.
Look,
Like the New England Patriots?
yes, the new Tom Brady tortured a woman in the new.
I knew it.
That's
why I
that's
hate
what
the
he's
Patriots.
doing. I mean, oh crap!
What?
I forgot the name of Tom Brady's first wife. Bridget Moynihan. That's Bridget
it
Moynihan.
is.
Thank you.
No,
right.
look, that game to me seems insane. But that's like the level of game. Like the stories of these games are getting so like wildly tilted into crazy. Like Metal
Yeah.
Gear is like like everyone else is going to where Metal Gear is
Right.
because you can't make 50 games in a series without constantly upping the stakes, right?
No, I beg to differ. There is no other game in the world like Metal Gear, in the Metal Gear saga. And you've looked at the wiki. It doesn't make sense, but it kind of makes sense in that world.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about storytelling in games, and I kind of want to bring Brian Bishop over.
Is he
Yeah.
around you?
He's somewhere around in this area.
He's mostly just hanging out with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. They're like
We're
best friends
talking
now.
about storytelling in games.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
talk about it for a minute.
So, David, anything
David,
else?
you're gonna come back for WWDC talk though, so don't go anywhere.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll go get Brian.
I'm going to dim the screen.
Wait, is
okay.
Brian not available to us?
I thought is he right
No,
there?
Brian's coming. He's just like 6 feet away from me. So when I say go get, I'm just going to wave at him.
Okay,
and then he will
we're
be
going to
here.
dim the screen. When we hear Brian talk, we'll just put the screen back up.
Beautiful.
This is quite a little bit of business that you're doing.
Look. See?
Real production
This is
value.
production
there,
value
Ross.
right there. I'm just doing what I can.
All right, tell me about storytelling games.
There's not much to say really, because that's what it is.
What?
But no, I'm going to explain to you Metal Gear Solid.
Okay.
So, actually, there's no way I can
No,
do that.
what is
but
the
seriously.
Steven Spielberg and George Lucas thing that you're trying to do?
No, so Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, like they had this talk, and Brian was actually there. He did a couple stories
Mm-hmm.
on it. Trying to pull it up. The two things that were interesting to me, one was he talked about the utter demise of the theater business as we know it,
Yeah.
and looking more like a Broadway model, which I thought was interesting. These things become more events, and the day and date stuff with home theater just kind of happens more.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was interesting to me was storytelling. They're like, it's never going to be Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Like
in
not-
video games.
In video games, yeah.
Why is that? I hear Brian.
I
doing
hear
stuff.
Brian. But there's this one line that I love. It's like, by its very nature, there cannot be a plot in a game. And I think the thing they're getting at is like, you have become an active member, and so you yourself are making these decisions, or you're not making decisions. You don't have an emotional resonance to it.
Yeah.
I think it's always been the issue. Either you're kind of along for the ride, which then it's not really a game; it's more of a movie, or you're actually having material impact, in which case you're always going to do the right thing, or you're going to die and reset, or
Yeah.
save and lows. There's no emotional resonance for you. There's no nothing at
'Cause
stake.
your choices don't matter.
Right.
Brian, are you back? Are you here?
Hey guys, what's going on?
Brian.
Brian, we're gonna fade you up. There you
Lovely.
are. Look at that.
Oh yeah.
Television magic right there.
Woo.
Brian, so you talked to Steven Spielberg today.
Yeah, we
You sat
hung
in his
out.
lap.
He's a cool bro. He's cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it was, he and Lucas, they spoke at that panel at USC on Wednesday. The USC had an interactive media school kind of opening up, and Don Matrick from Microsoft was there. It was supposed to be about the future of entertainment in terms of, new art forms and that kind of stuff. And Lucas quickly turned things over to things he wanted to talk about because George Lucas needs to own every conversation, is what we learned.
Yeah.
Wait. Is this a bad thing? I mean, it sounds like a way more interesting conversation than it was
Yeah, I'd
going to
rather
be.
hear from George Lucas and Don Matrick.
Oh yeah, no, it was fascinating. I mean, Matrick was very polished and on message, where Spielberg and Lucas were actually talking about real shit that they were passionate about, and it was awesome. No, it was a fascinating conversation.
Games can't have a plot. Tell me about this. What did they say?
Yeah. Well, Lucas's big thing was that telling. There's two different things. There's storytelling, which is one person. It's like me telling you a story about how I did this thing or whatever, and you think about the plot and what happens and the stories and the characters and the themes. And then there's games, and the idea is once you have agency or free will in something, and it's not really a story anymore. It's something else. And Lucas's point was that games basically they're just now adding characters to movies. They're realizing that makes it a richer experience, but they don't have a set plot, and that kind of hinders what you can do. So his that line that Ross was mentioning about you can't have plot. It's saying that it's like you can't plot out a sports game, which is what Lucas was saying. Video games are more like because players can do whatever they want essentially.
Yeah, but I mean, look, here's my response to this because I would point out that Roger Ebert made this exact argument like 5 years ago and was like roundly shot down by the games community, right?
Well, no.
The Stewart's argument was that are video games art or not, and I think it's easy to say any creative endeavor can be art. That's kind of less like a given when you step in.
But his entire thing was like a game of chess can never be art because it's a game, right? You win or lose, and there's a mechanic, and the mechanic creates drama, and the drama creates emotion. And if your only metric is you're creating emotion, and that's art, like then a game of chess can be art. But video games can't be that because the story you can't invest in the story when you have an unlimited number of consequence-free choices.
So what he should have said was it's not storytelling because like a painting doesn't necessarily have a story. It's just a freaking painting sometimes.
Right, and that's the differentiation. It's like it's storytelling, and basically traditional narrative storytelling. I mean, to be fair, it's not what video games are. Video games are something different. The whole conversation calls out for a different definition, which is really interesting because we're now in this space where people are trying to meld narrative. You've got Quantum Break. You've got the Destiny video game and TV show, or not Destiny, the sci-fi show. I'm drawing a blank. Defiance, thank you. Where people are kind of trying to merge the two, and we need a new definition because that's the way things are going. But it's a nuanced argument, but they're right. It's not traditional storytelling. It's just something else that can have emotional impact, but it's not. At one point, Lucas compared Spielberg, what he was doing to Homer, which was really, really hilarious, and Spielberg thought was hilarious. But in a sense, it's true. Like that traditional structure of I'm going to tell you A to B, here's what happened, it's going to take you on a journey. It's not what games are. It doesn't mean games are worse or better, in my opinion. It's just that there's something different.
So is it even worth it to try to tell a story in a game? Because every game now is full of story, right? I mean, there was, oh God, where was this piece? There's a great piece about E3 that was like, we keep building all this technology and upping the graphics level and increasing the interactivity. And they're always like, and then we'll be able to tell even better stories about our characters. I don't remember. I wish I had off the top of my head where this link was.
I think that's everybody everywhere talking about gaming.
Right, but the point of this piece, and we'll find it. We'll put it in the post when the Vergecast goes up. But the point was, you're lying, right? You're not building all this technology in the service of better storytelling. You're not building it to make deeper characters or anything that anybody actually cares about. You're doing it to create first-person shooters, and all of these games, all of the bleeding-edge games for all of these systems are first-person shooters or possibly third-person shooters, right?
But here's the thing. Like I will say, the best video game story I've ever had, like that I've ever experienced, and this is gonna be the weird one, is Left 4 Dead. And there is no story. It's 4 people who all just have equal footing, and they're fighting zombies. And like literally, like I think it was like Joystick's just Griffin McElroy, like who will sacrifice himself for other people, so 3 people can kind of get out there. Like that's a great story to me. But it also speaks to like what video games do best. It's immersion. Like their world building. There may be side stories that happen, other characters doing their thing, but when it comes to you controlling yourself, like there's only so much you can anticipate for that.
Right.
It's not going to be tragic because you have a machine gun or a cheat code.
Right. Well, there's also things like what Telltale's doing. The Walking Dead is really interesting because you're going on an emotional journey there. You feel bad if you do bad things. I mean, they have ways they do it. There's a technique. There's the Clementine character. It's not just like here we're telling you the story. There's tricks that they're using essentially, right? But that is an emotional experience. And I think that's the gray area that's interesting. And if anything, that's what's developing now, and that's maybe the area that Lucas was jumping over and not kind of seeing, because he's simply thinking of, like you said, Nilay, AAA first-person shooters, and then, the movies you see on television or in a theater. And there's this new emergent ground that where interesting things are happening. It's just not what we think of as traditional storytelling or narrative.
And frankly, I find it intolerable. I mean, no. No, it's just so much like, it's funny. I feel very binary. I feel I understand Spielberg's pain. No, I do. It's either I want to relax and like not do anything, or I want to like play a video game. And it's very rarely that I want to do some weird hybrid thing in the middle.
And to Brian's point, like I've actually, I think a month ago I started doing the Walking Dead game.
Yeah.
And I had to turn it off because it's an emotionally trying game. Like when I play games, most of the time I'm just trying to relax and hang out. Like Walking Dead, I'm actively involved, and there's so many unintended consequences to the choices I'm making that I don't realize.
Yeah, I have a hard enough time making choices in my regular life. And the unintended consequences of the shit I do every day are like already terrible. Yeah. All right, Brian, I'm going to kick you off. Get out of my face.
Have a good one, you guys.
I've really enjoyed talking to you. We'll talk to you again.
Sounds good.
Actually, we won't. No, we're going to talk to you about Man of Steel later. So just,
okay, cool.
Well, why don't we just talk about it now and then bring David back for Dub?
All right, fine.
Real
Stay
quick.
here and tell me about Superman.
Without spoiling it.
Superman.
Is it possible for a Superman movie to be good? My theory is no.
I think no also. And I saw it earlier this week, and I still think...
So you guys have seen it. I haven't seen it. I'm going to see this
We're not
weekend.
going to spoil it. We're not going to spoil it. But
I think you can be a Batman guy or a Superman guy, and I think the world is full of Batman guys or Batman ladies, and the Superman faction is dead. It's over and done with.
Here's what I'll say. I mean, we had, Todd Gilchrist wrote a great review for us, basically talking about how the movie was, it was like basically the son of two fathers. In this case, Nolan and Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
And it definitely is that. It's a Zack Snyder movie first, and it has Christopher Nolan character beats. If you loved, the way that Sucker Punch and Watchmen worked and looked, then a lot of this stuff you will dig. If it's not so much your bag, maybe you'll have problems with it. I think what it does, whether you like it or not, it does prove that Superman can work in a modern context, because that was the big question, right? He's a do-gooder. He's, how can he work in this? Because we're very cynical. It's an angsty Superman. It's a guy with issues.
By the way, when you said that out loud, the computer literally made an error beep sound. I want you to know that Skype doesn't believe you. Because I don't believe you. I just don't. It's like, look, it's the same problem as video games. How do you raise the stakes of anything when your main character can do anything, right? What are the challenges that he will face? And as far as I can tell, the challenge is, another character with the same abilities always has to appear and either kill him or blow up the world.
So
That's every Superman story from now on till the end of time.
I mean, the larger arching story, of course, you're correct. Because it's going to be some sort of villain. The stakes have to be that big, because apparently every movie has to have stakes where it's like a James Bond thing. If the world isn't imperiled, then nobody cares.
But the main character, he can do anything.
Right, so what they do is they internalize it. What happens is basically the struggle, what's interesting about it, and this is the Nolan influence, I'd argue, is that it's about Superman's internal struggle, dealing with who he is, what it's like to be, in a world where, he's not accepted. It's very much about, his angst and internal struggle with who he is.
My God,
and it actually is effective. And then he learns how to fly and everything's okay.
I hate it
but
here.
No, it's not, I don't think it's entirely successlook, I have,
My hair
Ross
is
and I talked
perfect
about,
no matter what I
issues with
do.
it.
But
This is the worst.
does he shave?
You're done. Look. I'm going to go see it. Maybe my mind will be changed. I'm just saying, as a concept, that for me is
Right.
Batman's a detective. That's all I got to say. He's a detective.
Yeah, I think it proves the character can
Really good
work.
detective.
It isn't as successful as I would have liked it to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it's going to be huge. It's already made, I think, $21 million. It's probably going to break June records.
It's already made 170
But
in
Superman
promotional.
Returns made a bunch of money.
sure.
And that
Well, Superman Returns made 200 overall. They're expecting this is going to make 100 at least by the end of the weekend. And Superman had a 5-day opening weekend. Superman Returns did. This is going to kill Superman Returns.
oh good. Finally.
Something can kill it.
Let it
Finally the taste of that can Ugh. Look, I'm just
Superman-
saying. I'm gonna go see
Superman?
it. It just, to me, it's like how do you make that? I hear they tried really hard to make the character relevant. I just don't believe that it's possible.
Right.
I believe the world has transitioned to a Batman state, and we are in our heart of hearts, America, are Batman.
But you do
and
realize
Bat ladies.
Justice League, both.
Yeah, that's dumb.
How do you?
It's dumb.
All right.
That's dumb. All that crossover. Look, I don't. Maybe I'm
Okay.
just not a comic book guy.
It's coming.
Brian,
It's coming.
you're out of here.
Brian,
by the way, we've now hit the point in Vergecast where people are going to send in angry notes saying I don't understand games and I don't understand comic books, and both of those things are true. I don't understand either of those things. And I, like most Americans, know that Batman is awesome and video games are killing people. And that's all I need to know.
Can you go get David? I'm going to fade you down.
Okay, take care, guys.
Yeah, do your little business, your production magic. Ross Miller, senior editorial producer of The Verge, making it quality for us.
Write it up, write it down. Thank
Yeah.
you, guys. So we're going to talk about iOS 7. You were there, though.
I was there. So Josh and I spent Monday was a big day for us. Josh and I were at WWDC. The rest of the team was at E3. WWDC for us was crazy as ever. So the room, 2,000 more people in the room at WWDC this year. That's what Apple told us. Just packed to the gills.
Like they just fit more chairs and things. Because like it's
They
always
fit
sold
in
out.
more chairs. Yeah. And we were very like. It's funny like comparing how Google and Google's in the same room like 3 weeks earlier for I/O, like literally the same room, and just comparing like how they run their events is like very interesting.
I mean, it's also a developer focused event, or supposed to be.
Well, I/O's developer focused,
no,
right?
they both are, right?
But just comparing, like Google had a show, like
Yeah.
there was like a village set up outside. They had like partners there demonstrating stuff. Like Google's it's a much smaller event. They have fewer people, but it's interesting how much bigger the number they just do more stuff, right? Like Google has Chrome and Android and a TV platform, like. So it was just watching all that unfold was very interesting. Apple's very focused.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is, I mean, that's just the two
it's
companies.
funny,
are just
too, 'cause,
different.
like-
I want to talk about WWDC. I'm back. I have
You're
things
back.
to talk about.
All right,
yeah.
Here you go.
So anyway, so we go in there and we go through the keynote.
Hi, David.
Hi.
It's a Tim Cook keynote, much different vibe. Much of it was I think the sort of parlor bet before the keynote was whether Johnny Ive would get on stage.
Right.
A lot of people thought he had to, basically. He didn't. He had a video. I think his video is ridiculous.
Has he ever been on stage?
He's been on
the
stage.
iPhone thing.
He did MacBook Air, the first one. He was on stage and he explained it, and he very slowly talked about extrusion, which everybody should just go watch that. It's amazing.
Is that the term for pulling things out of envelopes?
No,
Is
it's
that-
because that's how they make the bottom panel of the Air, right? They extrude a piece of aluminum and then they do all the CNC operations. It's like great. It makes milling aluminum seem like the most interesting thing you can do, which it probably is. Anyway, so Ive didn't get on stage. He did a video about iOS 7. Which, if you just watch it with like new eyes, like at the time it's like very emotional. You're seeing all this new stuff. There it is. Like, keep in mind this is the big interface reveal for iOS 7.
Right.
So we're seeing all these new features. We're seeing all this new stuff. He's talking about it. But if you go back now that iOS 7 is kind of familiar and watch it, you're like, wow, he's talking really slowly and like you're stupid. Like he's just very slowly explaining to you that like Apple is better than you. It's kind of a unique. I think a lot of the reaction to iOS 7 came from this reveal, and I want to talk about that a little bit more because I think there's some really smart things here. I think there's some really dumb things here, but I think the way they showed it off and then the way they've talked about it since are so different,
Right.
that it's a lot of the initial reaction came from this video, and I encourage people to just go watch it again because it's really interesting. Anyway, so
Wait.
Go ahead.
So Nilay, can you explain that a little more actually? Because I've been the way you've been out of E3, I've been kind of out of WWDC with all of this, and I've seen like a lot of the reaction online and a lot of the way people are talking about it ahead of time, and like I tweeted something snarky right after it happened. But So this video was the first reveal of all this stuff.
So the way WWDC is structured was they're like, and now we have a new version of OS 10. It's called Mavericks, right? And they showed off the new icon. Craig Federighi, who's now the head of engineering for iOS and OS 10,
and was like the star of the show.
He's great. He's a great presenter.
Yeah.
He's extremely handsome. And if I could
He's very handsome.
if I could spend one day of my life looking like Craig Federighi, that day would be tremendous. He's just very smooth, very polished, very great. Told a lot of jokes, like just on his game, right? Great presentation for OS 10. OS 10 is getting a lot of features that are like power user features. It's stuff
like
that
the tab finder and stuff like that.
they've got
right?
a tabbed finder. They've got tags, like you can tag in the file system. There's better multi-screen support for full screen apps. It can get iOS notifications, which I think is interesting and kind of random. It's just cool stuff.
I'm actually really excited about.
You can reply if you get a message and
Right.
messages and you get a notification. You can click right on the notification or reply, which is like, why don't you just do that for the iPhone?
Right.
Like everybody's been asking you to do this on the iPhone for like 3 years. And fine, do it there. Just like move it over next year.
Right.
But like, so OS 10, and then they're done, and they, now let's talk about iOS. And Tim Cook introduces a video of Johnny Ive talking, and then after that's done, Federici comes back out to demo everything. But what the disconnect was, and this is really, I think, they clearly had some concept of why they made these changes, right? Mm-hmm. And they never said why. Right? They're like, we just knew it was time to make changes. We reconsidered the entire interface to get rid of clutter and to, think about layers and depth. And it's like, okay, you knew you had some answers, like some questions, and here are your answers, but you are not telling me why those are the answers. But in any way, shape, or form.
And did they really get rid of clutter at all? Because like the system's the same.
Some of it looks like a complete mess.
Yeah.
Like just an utter garbled mess. Like I think Command Control Center. It's the new, you swipe up from the bottom, you get all these icons and stuff in Control Center. It's like, why doesn't that go up the screen all the way?
Right.
Like, why does that only cover half of the screen? Or three-quarters of the screen? There's like all kinds of, like, the number one criticism of iOS 7, we've now had, the developer builds are out in the world. People have had a chance to play with it. When you look at the lock screen, it's a swipe to unlock, and there's an arrow pointing up underneath it. Mm-hmm. But that's not how you unlock the phone. Like it's just, you still do the same motion, but you can only do it in one direction. So if you swipe from the right to the left, it just like bounces.
It's ridiculous.
If you swipe up, you get Control Center, and so it's like it's just this very confusing. Like it's almost like they've expected people to internalize how the iPhone works so much that they can add in cues for other behaviors and expect that your muscle memory will keep you within the realm of sanity.
Right. So if you're a new person and you pick this up, you're not going to get it. And David, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you 1 second. If we're going to talk about one minor nuance that I've been watching these
But those
videos,
people don't exist.
I know.
First of all,
fair enough. I've been watching
that's
this.
the thing.
Go on.
That's not an unreasonable expectation, I don't think. Like, I don't think for Apple to say, that you swipe left to right to unlock your phone, so we're just going to let you do that and move on to other stuff. I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
I would say that the pendulum has swung too far. Right? Everyone's screaming for redesign. You've got all these textures, all these real-world objects. You need to clean it up and make it better. Mm-hmm. And what they did was they radically changed the core ideas of the interface. And I'm just saying, like, the thing they didn't do, they didn't explain why they reached the answers that they reached. And if they had just done that, if they were like, look, we know we need like an interaction model that's like, controls happen on this layer. Like we're building all these layers, and like here's why we think the layers work they do. Mm-hmm. I think people would have bought into a little bit more. Instead, it was like a lot of like, here's our interface. It's really flashy, and then they like stopped.
Right, and that's one thing. It's weird because it seems like Apple is usually really good at doing that. They're usually really good at saying, like, this is, here's how we sort of imagine the user interaction and kind of guiding you through, like, here's why this looks the way it does.
Yeah.
And they I guess, just didn't do that here. Like, it might exist.
Well, no, instead what they had was this video of Johnny Ive, like, whispering to you about how design is simplicity, and simplicity is the essence of design. And it's like, that's great, dude, and I desperately want to get drunk with him. Like, I just want to know what he talks about. I'm just curious.
Just like that too, all the time.
Yeah, I bet it's not.
Does he always talk really slow?
Johnny, tell me about your beer. Well,
it's so yellow. Like, I mean, it's just the yellowest yellow I could find.
The
like,
head is so simple.
Yeah, it's just like, that's fine. But like, usually in those moments when you reveal a new thing, you explain why the newness makes sense. And I just didn't see any of it. I am told over and over again by hundreds of angry Apple fans on Twitter that if I was a developer and I was there and I was at the sessions, I would hear Apple explaining to its developers why they made these choices. And I trust that is true. And
the developers aren't the people they have to be explaining this to.
Right. That's the thing. Like, the developers have to make apps, and that's great. But ultimately, people have to use the phone. And millions upon millions of people have to use the phone.
And let's not forget, like, whenever it comes out this fall, like, the people who do not follow this as well as they do, like our parents or whatever, they're going to wake up, they have an update, and then their phone is entirely different.
Right.
And then we're going to get phone calls about that, by the way. Absolutely.
And not just different. I mean, that's the thing. The pendulum has swung so far with iOS 7 that it's like really bright, and I think it looks like board shorts. I think it looks like Hollister or like Hurley, like white board shorts with like neon print on them. The palettes are super bright. The colors are neon. They need to just bring it back a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think they honestly didn't know. I think it's very trendy in terms of design, and I think they need to bring it back to timeless. Right. And I think that's really important for them to do.
Here's my big question, and I tweeted a picture of the control center saying it was hideous, and a bunch of people responded saying the background was the biggest problem. And I think that might be true because I've seen a couple of people running
Yeah.
it with third-party app icons, and it's not quite this like stock out-of-the-box thing that Apple wants you to have. And it seems like the biggest mistake Apple made was just having this like horrific parallaxy shining background where like it doesn't have to be that bad, and you can like pull it back a little yourself. Is that?
Well, you know what's funny is
true?
yeah, that is true. I mean, it's all translucent, right? What's funny
Yeah.
is that I remember very clearly when the first OS 10 came out, and I was in college, and I would download themes for my OS 9 that made it look like OS 10, and nobody knew what OS 10 really worked like, and all the windows were blue because people thought the windows were blue instead of just being translucent to the stock blue background.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's kind of what's happening with iOS 7 right now is that we're seeing all these interactions, all these translucency, all these filters, all this stuff interact with some things that Apple set up and not with what it looks like in real life.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, why is it translucent? Why is there a button in Control Center that turns on the light as a flashlight, but if you push the camera, it like switches out to a camera app? Like those are inconsistent interactions, right? Like, and some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't. Why they have a Today view, which is very much supposed to be like Google Now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you open the notification center, you click on Today, it pulls in your mail, it pulls in your calendar, and says like,
Which
here's
is
all this
nice.
stuff. But it doesn't like do Google Now stuff. Like it doesn't like read your email and like tell you your flight information, which is fine. It's Apple doesn't have that service, but it's also like I can't plug in my third-party calendar to that.
Right.
So if I as I do use Gmail and Sunrise for mail and calendar, like iOS 7 they don't help me out. And I just I don't see it. Like they need to expand the universe. Like they're turning it into more of a computer, right? They're giving it real multitasking. They're giving it all these. There's a bunch of new Bluetooth stuff for watches and health monitoring, which looks very cool. They're doing game controllers, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And they have prototypes, and that the reports out of WWDC that I've seen, like they're working with Logitech to actually build like game controllers that fit over the phone.
Really? Wow.
And that you can't obviously see how that stuff will come to the Apple TV, right? They're doing all of this stuff to expand the functionality of their devices, but they're not doing stuff to expand the world of software that you run and experience on those devices. It's
But
window
at the
dressing,
same
right?
time, like, do they have to,
they've
too?
repainted
Yeah.
the interface, but they're like,
Well, and that's fine, right? If Apple can do their own services in a way
But
that
Apple's
is
mail
good
client
and makes
sucks.
sense, but they're not doing that.
Like, straight
Their
up,
mail
like, their mail
sucks.
client sucks.
This new iWork in iCloud thing doesn't seem good.
no. So that seems awesome. Let me
Right,
disagree
and so
with
it's
you.
like if it does, okay, then that's fine.
But one part of it seems awesome. Let me
What?
be clear.
All right.
It's really super hyper advanced, right? It's like I was talking to like other people from other companies, and they were like, that iCloud stuff is the most advanced stuff we've seen on the web. Like in terms of building a web app, like drag an image onto the thing and the text reflows, like very few people are doing that stuff.
Yeah.
We have to see like how many browsers will it run on? There's some questions there.
Right.
That stuff is great. But then all of the back end stuff, which is like you wrote a really great web app without thinking that it's on the web. So like then stuff like the live collaboration, like how it's going to work across platform, like if you send it to 50 people, like where the documents live, how you can share them, all of that stuff is still like open questions. So it's
Right.
like Apple's really good at building the web apps. They're not really good at building the web services. And I think that's going into WWDC. I think the criticism that we've all gelled on, I wrote a piece on this, is that if Google is Apple's competitor, right, then the problem for Apple is that Google's getting better at services faster than Apple's getting better at design.
Right.
And I think all we saw at
You mean the opposite. Google's getting better at design
yeah.
faster than
Yeah,
Apple's
it's
getting
better
better
at
at
services.
Sorry, I've been talking a lot recently. Google's getting better at services faster than Apple's getting better at design. And even like the hardcore Apple fans have agreed with this notion. Like I got this line, I stole it from John Gruber, who stole it from an Apple employee.
Yeah.
Like down the line, right? Nothing at WWDC was about services. It was all about design. And I just want to like focus on the notion that Apple can't rely on design this way. They can't show off a new Mac Pro and be like, we still kick ass at designing computers, which is basically what Phil Schiller said. We can't innovate anymore, my ass. That's great, man. Nobody has ever said that you can't innovate in computer design or tablet design or phone design. Like clearly you can do those things. Where your problems is your service offerings compared to your biggest competitor are subpar. And like that's reality. Like people in their consumer lives rely on other big service providers. Like, Hotmail and Yahoo Mail are still like the most common mail providers like out there. Gmail's third. iCloud, I don't think, is on that list in that way, in a meaningful way. And that's just email. There's so much other stuff. So if you're going to build an integrated hardware, software, service solution, you need to elevate your service offerings to the level that your hardware and your software are known to be at.
But then wouldn't their counter be that they've built this incredible third-party app ecosystem that sort of alleviates that problem?
That'd be great. Let me set Gmail as my default mail client.
Well, okay, fair. But that's a huge problem. But the backgrounding stuff they've improved does help that too.
And that stuff is
Pretty
cool.
big
The idea
percent.
that you can get push notifications silently in the background,
Right.
that will
It's huge.
that will update an app, and you'll never know. You just update you'll open Twitter and it'll just be like there.
Yeah.
All that's great. They've caught up to Android in that respect tremendously. Where Android is pulling ahead and where Apple may not even want to go is Android is quickly turning into like a little computer, right? And the iPhone is turning into whatever it's turning into. And that's fine, and those paths can be divergent. But at the end of the day, I don't think the trend of I have an iPhone, which is the phone that I want to have, and I've replaced most of Apple's apps with third-party apps, that hasn't changed. And Apple should be really worried about that. Because once the experience of using those services is subpar on the phone and I'm replacing all their stuff with other people's, that means my willingness to change platforms for a better experience with those services gets higher.
I mean, we've seen this happen at The Verge. Like, this is everybody.
This is everybody
we had
switching
this-
to Android on The Verge.
Right, we had this huge shift from everybody using an iPhone to everybody using Android because the Google experience is so much better, and it became something we became really reliant on. And it's like for Gmail and Google Calendar and Google Drive, it's like it's not even.
And I will say, like, if you, and that's just because we run our business on Google Apps, right?
Right.
But like, I think a lot of people run their lives in Google Apps. Like my sister, my wife, like my parents, like they're Googled up. Like they just use Google stuff because they trust Google. Google's there for them,
Right.
And it's there no matter where they go. Whereas with iCloud and with Apple, it's like you have to have your device or have your computer. Like it's not as just tightly integrated, or it's not as dispersed. It's tightly integrated to a device. Now, if you have if you're all Windowsed up, which I know a lot of our readers are, like the iPhone is actually like still better for you than an Android phone because it's better at exchange.
Especially now with Office for the
And there's
iOS
Office,
too.
right? Like there are differences. I get it, but like I feel like Apple spent all their time focused on look at our crazy ass design, and they did not explain why they reached the design decisions they made, apart from their really feel good videos about why they say no to 100 projects, only yes to one, which is like okay, but why is everything translucent? Like just tell me the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And they did not address, I think, their failings in the service space. They talked about iCloud once, and it was to do iWork, which is like that's great, but you didn't. This is your developer conference, and Ellis is running pieces about how iCloud is failing developers. You know what would have gotten a bigger cheer than iWork for iCloud? If they would have been like, and now when you play a game on your iPhone, it syncs to your iPad. And like, that's all I would want. So they didn't get there. I mean, there's an endless amount to say about WWDC, but those are kind of like my key like takeaways. And I know it sounds super negative, and we've gotten a lot of you're being too negative about WWDC, but the stakes for this one were so high, and what people wanted were so high out of this iOS 7 refresh that I think that the criticism is warranted, because I think Apple showed up and they thought that they won the day, and I think the reality is they did a lot of beautiful things with iOS 7. They did a lot of extremely confusing things with iOS 7, and they still haven't. I think that the notion that you're going to upgrade the software on your phone and everything's going to be better and it's going to be automatically better than Android is not there yet. I think they need to explain how the services tie in, and they need to explain why the software works the way it does.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, it all feels really defensive. It feels like they read all this news about people saying, oh, it's skeuomorphic, the design hasn't changed since 2007. And so they came out and said, let's just change everything. Let's make sure that no one can accuse us of having a design that we've had before. Yeah. And seriously, and it's like this big thing of like, oh, it's stale and they're not paying attention and they're not innovating. And they're like, well, you can't in the sense that innovation can be a bad thing, but you can't accuse Apple of not thinking differently and blowing it up and starting over. And like, maybe that's what they were going for. Maybe that's the move they're trying to make.
I think they'll turn it back. I think
we can talk about this all day, but we seriously have to go.
We have to go.
We have to go.
Where am I going?
The studio is kicking us out. So
The studio's kicking us
yes,
out.
they have something in after this. So we have to go.
Look, Microsoft people, I hate your platform. Android people, it's a fragmented mess. And Apple people, I mean, just chaos. You're all doomed. And
BlackBerry.
video games are terrible, and comic books are for children. And that's the Vergecast, everyone.
I'm gonna go cry.
Rock and roll. Are we done? Are we done? I don't know if are we done or not. You can tweet at us. I'm just gonna keep talking. You can tweet at us. Oh, they turned us off.
They turn us off.